Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Pathfinder and watched the stars through the large front window. The ship moved quietly through space toward a distant signal that had appeared 3 days ago. His fingers moved across the control panel as he checked their course again. The signal came from the Kepler 442 system, a place where no ships were supposed to be. Lisa Webb sat at the communication station behind him. Her screens showed only empty static and the same repeating distress code they had been following. She pressed buttons and tried different frequencies but found nothing new. The message was simple and kept repeating the same numbers over and over. It meant someone needed help but gave no other details. Rick Barnes worked at the engineering station on the right side of the bridge. His hands moved quickly over his controls as he checked the ship's engines and power systems. Everything worked perfectly, but he knew they would need full power when they reached their destination. Space rescue missions always required more energy than anyone expected. Dr. Amy Foster stood near the science station, studying readings from their long-range sensors. She had been watching the data for hours, looking for any sign of what they might find ahead. The readings showed something large in the target system, but the distance made it hard to tell what it was. She knew it was bigger than a normal ship, but smaller than a space station. Jake had been a ship captain for 15 years, but he had never received orders like these before. The message from Earth Command was short and clear. Investigate the signal and provide assistance if needed. Do not make contact with alien vessels unless absolutely necessary. Follow all communication protocols. The last part worried him most because the protocols were very strict. For 300 years, humans had been part of the galactic community, but they had never spoken directly to any alien species. All communication happened through computer systems and automatic translators. Humans sent text messages and received text messages back. No voices were ever used. No one alive remembered why this rule existed, but everyone knew it was the most important law in space. Lisa checked her equipment again and made sure all the voice systems were turned off. The computers would handle any communication they needed to make. She had trained for years to use the text-based systems that connected human ships to alien vessels. The training was complex because alien computer languages were very different from human ones. Rick monitored their approach to the target system. The engines worked smoothly, and their fuel supplies remained high. He had loaded extra repair materials before they left Earth orbit because rescue missions often required fixing damaged ships. His tools and spare parts filled 3 cargo bays, enough to help almost any vessel they might encounter. Amy studied the files about the Kepler 442 system on her screen. The system had 5 planets, but none were supposed to support life. 2 gas giants orbited far from the star, while 3 rocky planets stayed much closer. The distress signal came from somewhere near the 3rd planet, which was covered in thick clouds and had a surface too hot for most known species. The alien races that made up the galactic community were very different from humans. The Zephyrians looked like large insects with 6 arms and hard shells covering their bodies. They lived on cold planets and moved very slowly. The Vortani were made of living crystal that changed colors when they thought different thoughts. They lived on worlds with high radiation that would kill most other species. The nebuloids existed as gas clouds that could change their shape and density. They lived in the empty space between stars and rarely visited planets at all. All of these species had one thing in common. They feared humans. Not because humans were violent or dangerous, but because humans were silent. In 3 centuries of contact, no alien had ever heard a human voice. They believed humans were cold, emotionless beings who thought only in logical terms. Human silence made them seem mysterious and threatening. Jake knew the aliens watched human ships carefully whenever they appeared in galactic space. Alien vessels would keep their distance and communicate only when necessary. Trade happened through automated systems, and diplomatic meetings used computer translators that turned thoughts into text. The system worked, but it felt strange and distant. The Pathfinder continued toward the signal source. Their sensors showed they would arrive in 6 hours. Jake ordered his crew to prepare for whatever they might find. Lisa loaded the communication protocols into her computers. Rick checked their rescue equipment and made sure everything was ready to use. Amy reviewed the medical supplies they carried in case they found injured survivors. None of them knew they were about to discover something that would change the relationship between humans and aliens forever. The distress signal ahead would force them to make a choice between following 3 centuries of protocol and doing what they knew was right. That choice would reveal the truth about why humans had remained silent for so long and show the galaxy what human voices really sounded like when they spoke with compassion and hope. 300 years ago, humanity had just developed faster-than-light travel and discovered they were not alone in the universe. The first alien signals came from a probe that humans had sent to explore a nearby star system. The probe's simple radio message was intercepted by a Zephyrian exploration ship that happened to be in the area. Ambassador Helen Carter had been chosen to lead humanity's first contact team. She was a skilled diplomat who spoke 7 human languages and had spent years preparing for this moment. Her team included linguists, scientists, and military advisors who had trained for every possible scenario they might encounter. Everyone on Earth watched as her ship approached the coordinates where the aliens had agreed to meet. The meeting was supposed to take place in neutral space between the 2 star systems. Helen's ship arrived first and waited as alien vessels began to appear. The first ship was long and thin with a hull that seemed to be made of dark metal. The second ship looked like a large crystal that sparkled with internal light. The third ship was harder to see because it seemed to be made of some kind of transparent material that bent light around it. Helen and her team had practiced their greeting many times. They planned to speak clearly and slowly while their computers recorded everything and attempted to translate. The aliens had sent mathematical signals that human scientists had decoded, so both sides believed they had established basic communication principles. Everyone felt confident that first contact would be successful. The alien ships moved into position around the human vessel. Helen could see them through the windows of the meeting room her team had prepared. She activated the communication system and began to speak. Her voice was calm and friendly as she introduced herself and welcomed the aliens to this historic moment. She spoke about humanity's desire for peace and cooperation among all intelligent species. The response was immediate and terrifying. Alarms began sounding on all the alien ships. Their weapon systems activated and defensive shields appeared around their hulls. The crystal ship began flashing bright red and yellow lights while the transparent ship started moving away rapidly. The metal ship turned to point its weapons directly at Helen's vessel. Helen tried to continue speaking, thinking the aliens might need more time to understand her words. She repeated her greeting and added that humans came in peace. Her linguists started speaking in different human languages, hoping one might be easier for the alien computers to translate. The military advisors prepared for combat while scientists frantically checked their equipment for malfunctions. The alien reaction grew worse with every word spoken. More ships appeared and formed a defensive formation around the first 3. Energy weapons charged and targeting systems locked onto the human vessel. The crystal ship's lights turned deep red while the transparent ship had moved far enough away to be barely visible. Messages in mathematical code began flooding the human communication system, but they were too complex and fast for the computers to translate. Helen made the difficult decision to stop speaking. The moment her voice ended, the alien weapons powered. Down slightly. Their ships remained in defensive positions, but the immediate threat of attack seemed to pass. Helen and her team realized that somehow their voices were being interpreted as weapons or threats by the alien technology. The aliens sent a new mathematical message that human computers could barely decode. It seemed to say that vocal communication was forbidden and that all future contact must happen through written symbols only. The message included simple pictographs showing sound waves with warning symbols around them. Another section showed text symbols with positive indicators. Helen tried to explain through mathematical messages that human voices were not weapons. She sent diagrams of human vocal cords and sound wave patterns that showed speech was natural, communication. The aliens responded with more warnings and seemed to believe that humans were trying to deceive them about the dangerous nature of their vocal abilities. The first contact meeting ended with an agreement that humans could join the galactic community only if they never used vocal communication with other species. All interaction would happen through text-based computer systems with multiple layers of filtering and translation. Humans would be allowed to trade and travel in galactic space, but their voices would be considered weapons of mass destruction. Helen and her team returned to Earth with news that was both wonderful and devastating. Humanity had made contact with multiple alien species and been invited to join a vast galactic civilization. However, they would have to give up one of the most basic forms of human expression to be accepted. The decision sparked debates across Earth for months. The choice was ultimately made by the governments of Earth working together. Humanity needed the technology and knowledge that galactic membership would provide. Earth's resources were limited, and the planet faced serious environmental challenges that alien science might help solve. The sacrifice of vocal communication seemed like a reasonable price to pay for survival and advancement. Over the following decades, human society adapted to the new reality. Special schools taught children how to communicate with aliens through computer interfaces. Scientists developed advanced translation software that could convert human thoughts into text messages acceptable to alien species. Engineers built communication systems that automatically blocked all vocal transmissions from human ships. The restriction became so normal that after 3 centuries, most humans had forgotten why it existed. They knew the rule, but not the reason behind it. Children learned in school that aliens were sensitive to sound and that voices could damage their equipment. But few understood the full story of what had happened during first contact. Helen Carter had died long ago, but her legacy lived on in the protocols that governed human-alien interaction. Every human ship carried her guidelines for proper communication behavior. Every diplomat learned her techniques for expressing complex ideas through text alone. Her sacrifice had allowed humanity to join the galactic community, but it had also created a barrier that no one knew how to cross. The Pathfinder dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Jake immediately saw what was sending the distress signal. A massive alien ship drifted near the third planet, dark against the stars except for a few flickering lights along its hull. The vessel was enormous, easily 10 times larger than any ship Jake had ever seen. Lisa's scanners quickly identified the ship as Zephyrian design, but it was unlike any Zephyrian vessel in their databases. The hull was covered with thousands of small windows, and thermal sensors showed it contained a huge population. This was not a military ship or trading vessel. It was a refugee transport carrying an entire city worth of people. Rick studied the engineering readouts streaming from his sensors. The alien ship's engines were failing badly, primary power was down to 30%, and life support systems were operating far below normal levels. Multiple hull breaches had been sealed with emergency patches, but they were leaking atmosphere slowly. The ship was dying. Amy activated the medical scanners and gasped at what she found. The ship contained over 50,000 Zephyrian civilians. The biosigns showed many were sick or injured, and the overall health readings were declining rapidly. Children, elderly, and wounded filled the massive vessel beyond its designed capacity. These people had fled some terrible disaster and were now trapped in a failing ship. Jake tried to establish communication using standard protocols. He activated the text-based system and sent identification codes along with an offer of assistance. The response came back immediately but was fragmented and difficult to understand. The alien ship's communication systems had been damaged, and their computers could only send broken messages. The partial message that came through made Jake's stomach tighten with concern. The Zephyrians were refugees from a stellar collapse. Their home star had become unstable and destroyed their entire solar system. This ship was one of many that had escaped, but most of the fleet had been lost during the evacuation. The survivors were running out of time. Lisa worked frantically. To improve the communication link, she boosted power to their transmitters and adjusted frequencies to compensate for the damage to the alien systems. Slowly, more complete messages began to come through. The Zephyrian ship was called the Haven of Tides, and its captain was named Zixhal. The messages from Captain Zixhal painted a desperate picture. The Haven of Tides had been traveling for 6 months with minimal supplies. Their food stores were nearly empty, and their water recycling systems had failed weeks ago. Worst of all, their engines would completely shut down within hours, leaving them stranded in space with no way to reach a habitable planet. Rick calculated rescue possibilities using the Pathfinder's resources. They could transfer some supplies, but not enough to sustain 50,000 people for more than a few days. The Haven of Tides was too large to tow with their ship's engines. The only solution would be to coordinate a complex engineering operation to repair the alien vessel's primary systems. Amy discovered something that changed everything. While analyzing the broken communication signals, she noticed they contained audio components that were being filtered out by their translation software. The Zephyrians were not just sending text messages, they were speaking, and their voices were being transmitted along with the data. She adjusted her equipment to decode the audio signals and suddenly heard alien voices for the first time in her life. The sounds were unlike anything she had expected. Zephyrian speech was musical, with tones that rose and fell like singing. Even through the static and interference, she could hear the emotion in their voices. Fear, hope, desperation, and love all came through clearly. Captain Zixhal was speaking directly to them, begging for help in words that their computers could now translate in real time. He talked about the children aboard his ship who had already lost their homes and families. He spoke of elderly Zephyrians who had survived the stellar collapse only to face death in the cold of space. His voice broke as he described watching people die every day while their ship slowly failed around them. The audio revealed something else that shocked the human crew. The Zephyrians were terrified of being rescued by humans. They called the Pathfinder the silent ship, and spoke of humans as the quiet ones who feel nothing. They believed humans would treat them as resources to be managed, rather than people to be saved. Their fear was not of death, but of being helped by beings they thought had no emotions. Jake realized they faced an impossible situation. Standard. Rescue protocols required text-only communication, which was too slow and limited for the complex operation needed to save the Haven of Tides. The alien ship's damaged systems could barely maintain the text link, and important technical details were being lost in translation. Meanwhile, 50,000 people were dying, while bureaucratic procedures prevented effective communication. Lisa made a discovery that added urgency to their situation. The Haven of Tides was not just failing randomly. The ship was caught in the gravitational field of the third planet and slowly being pulled toward the surface. The planet's thick atmosphere and extreme heat would destroy the vessel completely. They had less than 6 hours before the ship would be too close to the planet to escape. Rick's engineering analysis confirmed their worst fears. Repairing the Haven of Tides would require precise coordination between human and Zephyrian engineers. They would need to share detailed technical information, coordinate timing down to the second, and work together on complex procedures. The text-based communication system simply could not handle this level of detailed cooperation. Amy listened to more of the Zephyrian audio transmissions and heard something that broke her heart. The refugees were recording farewell messages to family members who might have survived on other ships. Parents spoke to children they would never see again. Elderly Zephyrians shared the history and culture of their destroyed world so it would not be completely lost. Young people sang traditional songs that had been passed down for thousands of years. Jake stood on his bridge and faced the hardest decision of his career. He could follow 3 centuries of protocol and watch 50,000 innocent people die, or he could break the most fundamental law of human-alien relations and try to save them. The choice would define not just his own future, but potentially the relationship between humans and all other species in the galaxy. The clock was running out, and the haven of tides continued its slow fall toward the deadly planet below. Lisa Webb stared at her communication console and made a decision that would change galactic history. She reached over and disabled the vocal filters that had blocked human speech for 300 years. Her hand trembled as she activated the audio transmission system and opened a direct channel to the Haven of Tides. "This is the UES Pathfinder," she said into her microphone. "We hear your distress. We're here to help." The response from the Zephyrian ship was immediate silence. All their transmissions stopped completely. Lisa could see on her screens that their communication systems were still active, but no signals were coming through. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake that would doom both ships. Then Captain Zixhal's voice came through the speakers, filled with shock and wonder. "The Silent Ones speak," he said in musical tones that their translation software rendered into clear English. "Your voices carry warmth. We did not know humans could feel as we feel." Jake moved to stand beside Lisa at her station. He knew that speaking would end his career and possibly violate the most important treaty in human history, but 50,000 lives hung in the balance. He activated his own microphone and spoke directly to the alien captain. "Captain Zixhal, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Pathfinder. We can see your ship is in danger. We want to work together to save your people. Will you trust us?" The silence that followed lasted for long moments. Jake could imagine the chaos aboard the Haven of Tides as Zephyrians tried to understand what they were hearing. These aliens had lived their entire lives believing humans were emotionless machines who communicated only through cold computer systems. Zixhal's reply revealed the depth of his surprise. "Captain Morrison, we have never heard human voices before. Your words carry something we did not expect. There is concern in your voice. There is urgency. You speak as one who cares about strangers. How is this possible?" Amy Foster stepped forward and activated her own microphone. "Captain Zixhal, we are not what your people believe. We feel joy and sorrow just as you do. We have families and children. We understand loss because we have experienced it ourselves. Your people's suffering matters to us." Rick Barnes joined the conversation from his engineering station. "Captain, my name is Rick Barnes. I am an engineer. I can hear your ship's systems failing through our sensors. If we work together, we can fix your engines and get your people to safety. But we need to coordinate our efforts precisely." The transformation in the Zephyrian responses was immediate and profound. Where before their messages had been formal and distant, now they carried emotional depth that translated clearly through the alien voice patterns. Zixhal began speaking rapidly, describing their situation with details he had not included in the text messages. "Engineer Barnes, our primary fusion reactors are cycling down because the magnetic containment fields are failing. We have backup systems, but they cannot support life support for much longer. Our navigation computers were damaged during the evacuation, and we cannot calculate an escape trajectory from this planet's gravity well." Rick's voice carried confidence and determination as he responded. "Captain, I can help with both problems. I'm transmitting detailed specifications for a temporary magnetic field generator we can construct using parts from both our ships. While we build that, my colleagues can help you plot a course to the nearest safe harbor." Jake coordinated the rescue effort with clear, direct commands that carried authority and compassion. "Captain Zixhal, we're going to need some of your engineers to work directly with ours. Can you prepare spacewalk teams to meet us at your engineering section?" The efficiency of vocal communication amazed everyone involved. Complex technical procedures that would have taken hours to explain through text messages were conveyed in minutes of direct conversation. Emotional nuances that could never be transmitted through computer systems made cooperation natural and effective. Amy provided medical assistance by speaking directly to Zephyrian doctors aboard the Haven of Tides. Dr. Kethlar, we can see that many of your people are suffering from malnutrition and dehydration. We're preparing supply packages with nutrients that are safe for Zephyrian biology. Can you guide us to your medical bays? The alien doctor's response revealed how much the Zephyrians had misunderstood about humans. Dr. Foster, we believed humans saw other species as resources to be managed efficiently. Your voice tells us you see us as people who deserve care. This knowledge changes everything we thought we knew about your kind. As the rescue operation progressed, the emotional barriers between the two species began to dissolve. Zephyrian engineers worked alongside Rick Barnes, sharing technical knowledge and creative solutions. Their voices blended together in the communication channels as they solved problems that neither species could have handled alone. Lisa coordinated between multiple teams, her voice serving as a link that kept everyone informed and focused. Team 3. The magnetic field generator is online. Team 7. The navigation computers are accepting the new trajectory data. All teams, we have 4 hours until we need to begin the orbital burn sequence. Captain Zixhal's voice carried growing amazement as he realized what was happening. Captain Morrison, your people work with ours as if we were family. The voices of your crew carry the same tones we use when we care deeply about something. How long have humans possessed this capacity for empathy? Jake's response was simple and honest. We have always been this way, Captain. We were just never allowed to show you. The Haven of Tides began to move away from the dangerous planet as their repaired engines came online. 50,000 Zephyrian voices could be heard in the background of their transmissions, singing songs of gratitude and hope. The sound was beautiful beyond anything the human crew had ever experienced. Dr. Amy Foster listened to the alien songs and felt tears forming in her eyes. Captain Zixhal, your people's voices are beautiful. We have never heard such music before. Zixhal's reply revealed the tragedy of 3 centuries of silence. Dr. Foster, your people's voices are equally beautiful to us. We have spent lifetimes believing you could not sing, could not laugh, could not cry. We have missed so much by never hearing the music of human speech. The rescue was complete, but something far more important had been accomplished. 2 species had finally truly met each other for the first time. News of the incident spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The Haven of Tides had broadcast their rescue to every Zephyrian colony world, and those transmissions were quickly picked up by the communication networks of other species. Within hours, the Vortani Collective and Nebuloid Confederation were demanding explanations from the Galactic Council. On the crystalline world of Vortanis Prime, the ruling crystal formations pulsed with confused colors as they tried to process what they had learned. The Vortani had spent centuries believing that humans were logical beings who functioned like living computers. The idea that human voices carried emotion and compassion challenged everything they understood about their silent galactic neighbors. High Resonance Krilthex, the primary Vortani representative to the Galactic Council, began an immediate investigation into the historical records of first contact. The crystal being's body shifted through deep blue and purple hues as it accessed archived data that had not been reviewed for decades. What it discovered sent shockwaves of bright yellow alarm throughout the Vortani collective consciousness. In the vast emptiness between stars, the nebuloid entities that called themselves the Drift Collective began to coalesce into larger formations to discuss the implications of human speech. These gas-based life forms communicated through chemical changes and electrical patterns, but they had developed sophisticated translation technologies to understand solid-state species. Elder Current, Wispether, an ancient nebuloid who had existed during the original first contact events, shared its memories with the collective. The gaseous being remembered the fear and confusion of that first meeting when human voices had triggered defensive responses across multiple alien vessels. But now, hearing the recordings from the Haven of Tides rescue, it realized those voices had carried the same emotional patterns that nebuloids recognized as expressions of friendship and concern. Dr. Amy Foster found herself at the center of a galactic investigation as the most qualified xenobiologist to have heard extended alien speech. She worked with teams of scientists from Earth to analyze the audio recordings from the rescue mission. Her preliminary findings suggested that human vocal patterns contained emotional complexity that most alien species had never encountered. The harmonic structures in human speech carry layered meaning, she explained to the emergency council session convened on Earth. When Captain Morrison spoke to the Zephyrians, his voice conveyed not just information, but emotional context that made cooperation natural. The aliens could hear that he genuinely cared about their survival. Rick Barnes testified about the technical aspects of the rescue operation. Working with vocal communication was 10 times more efficient than our standard text protocols, he reported. The Zephyrian engineers could hear the urgency in my voice when I explained critical procedures. They responded faster because they understood not just what to do, but how important it was to do it quickly. Lisa Webb provided the most detailed analysis of the communication breakthrough. The moment I spoke to Captain Zixhall, everything changed. The formal, distant tone of their text messages disappeared. Their voices became warm and cooperative. It was like meeting them for the first time, even though our species have had contact for 3 centuries. On the insectoid world of Zephyr Prime, massive changes were already beginning. The rescued refugees from the Haven of Tides had shared their experience with humans who could speak, and the revelation was transforming Zephyrian society. For generations, they had taught their children that humans were cold, calculating beings who viewed other species as tools to be used efficiently. Captain Zixhall became a celebrity across Zephyrian space as he told the story of his rescue. His recordings of human voices were played in schools and public gatherings. Young Zephyrians listened in amazement to the sounds of human laughter, concern, and determination. The idea that humans could feel emotions as deeply as Zephyrians was revolutionary. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session for the first time in over a century. Representatives from all major species gathered on the neutral station at Harmony Point to address the crisis in interspecies relations. The crystal formations of the Vortani flickered with uncertain colors, while Zephyrian delegates moved their 6 arms in agitated patterns. Nebuloid representatives formed swirling clouds of visible confusion. Ancient records were retrieved from deep storage and examined by teams of historians and linguists. The original First Contact files revealed a truth that shocked the galactic community. The early translation systems had catastrophically misinterpreted human vocal communication, labeling it as a form of sonic weapon rather than emotional expression. Ambassador Helen Carter's original reports were studied in detail for the first time in centuries. Her descriptions of human vocal communication had been dismissed as propaganda, designed to make weapons seem harmless. Now, in light of the Haven of Tides incident, her words took on new meaning and revealed the tragedy of the original misunderstanding. Dr. Amy Foster led a joint scientific committee that included researchers from all major species. Their task was to analyze human vocal patterns and determine their true nature. The results were published simultaneously across thousands of worlds and changed galactic understanding of humanity forever. The study revealed that human voices carried emotional information in multiple layers. Tone, rhythm, and harmonic content all conveyed meaning that alien species could understand once their translation systems were properly calibrated. Far from being weapons, human voices were sophisticated communication tools that expressed empathy, creativity, and social bonding. The committee's most significant finding concerned the complexity of human emotional expression. Humans appear to be capable of communicating multiple emotional states simultaneously, the report stated. A single sentence can carry information, concern, hope, and determination all at once. This emotional complexity may exceed that of any other known species. The implications were staggering. 3 centuries of interspecies relations had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding. Humans had been viewed as emotionally limited beings when they were actually among the most emotionally sophisticated species in the galaxy. Their enforced silence had hidden their greatest strength from their galactic neighbors. Trade agreements were suspended as species reassessed their relationships with humanity. Diplomatic protocols that had been established for centuries were suddenly obsolete. The galactic community faced the challenge of rebuilding 300 years of diplomatic, economic, and cultural relationships based on a completely new understanding of human nature. Young members of alien species began learning human languages for the first time. Zephyrian students practiced making sounds similar to human speech. Vortani crystals experimented with harmonic frequencies that mimicked human vocal patterns. Nebuloid entities tried to understand how solid beings could create such complex emotional expressions through vibrations in gas. The transformation was not just technological or diplomatic, it was deeply personal for every individual who heard human voices for the first time and realized they had been wrong about humanity for their entire lives. The Galactic Council chambers had never hosted an event like this before. For the first time in 3 centuries, a human would address the assembled representatives using vocal communication. Ambassador Carl Hughes stood at the central podium, surrounded by thousands of alien delegates who had come to hear humanity speak. The chamber itself had been modified to accommodate species with different sensory capabilities. Vortani crystal formations were positioned to catch and amplify acoustic vibrations. Nebuloid entities had condensed into visible forms that could detect sound waves. Zephyrian delegates adjusted their hearing organs to pick up the full range of human vocal frequencies. Carl looked out at the assembled aliens and felt the weight of history on his shoulders. His words would either begin a new era of cooperation or potentially destroy the fragile peace that had existed for centuries. He had been chosen not just for his diplomatic skills, but for his warm, expressive voice that conveyed emotion clearly, even through translation systems. Representatives of the galactic community, he began, his voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. I speak to you today not as a silent observer, but as a member of a species that has waited 300 years to share our true nature with our neighbors among the stars. The reaction was immediate and visible. Vortani crystals shifted to colors that indicated fascination and wonder. Zephyrian antennae moved in patterns that suggested deep attention. Nebuloid entities swirled with patterns that their translation systems identified as expressions of curiosity and hope. Carl continued, allowing emotion to flow naturally into his words. We have been shaped by your fear of our voices, and we shaped ourselves to meet your expectations. We became silent not because silence was our nature, but because we believed it was the price of acceptance. Today, I want to share with you who we really are when we are free to speak our hearts. Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were honored guests at the assembly. They sat in a special section reserved for the heroes of the Haven of Tides rescue. Lisa Webb felt tears in her eyes as she listened to Ambassador Hughes give voice to centuries of suppressed human emotion and expression. When my colleague Captain Morrison spoke to save 50,000 Zephyrian lives, he did not speak as a military commander giving orders, Carl said, his voice warm with pride. He spoke as a father who understood the value of every child aboard that ship. He spoke as a human being who could not bear to watch innocents suffer when he had the power to help. The response from the Zephyrian delegation was unprecedented. Captain Zixhall, who had been given a place of honor among his people's representatives, rose to his feet and spoke in return. "Ambassador Hughes, we have heard your captain's voice, and we know this to be true. His words carried the same tones we use when we speak of our own children. We were wrong to fear such voices. Dr. Amy Foster had prepared extensive materials about human emotional expression, but she realized they were unnecessary. The aliens were experiencing human emotion directly through Carl's speech. His voice conveyed sincerity, hope, regret, and determination in ways that no scientific report could capture. We grieve for the centuries of misunderstanding," Carl said, allowing sadness to color his words. "We mourn the connections that were never made, the friendships that never formed, the collaborations that never happened because we could not share our thoughts and feelings as nature intended." High-resonance krillthex, the Vortani representative, responded with crystal formations that rang like musical chimes. Their translation came through as words, but the emotional content was clear in the harmonics. "Human ambassador, we too share this grief. We have missed the music of human thought for 3 centuries. Our crystalline songs would have been enriched by harmony with human voices." Elder Current Wispether spoke for the nebuloids, their gaseous form creating patterns that sparkled with electromagnetic emotions. "The chemical songs of our people have been incomplete without understanding the emotional complexity of human expression. We wish to learn the full symphony of interspecies communication." Carl's voice grew stronger and more hopeful as he outlined humanity's vision for the future. "We propose not just the restoration of vocal communication, but the creation of new forms of interspecies cooperation. Human creativity combined with Zephyrian patience, Vortani logic, and nebuloid adaptability could solve challenges that no single species could face alone." Rick Barnes was invited to demonstrate the practical benefits of vocal cooperation. He stood and spoke directly to alien engineers in the audience, describing technical solutions that had emerged during the Haven of Tides rescue. His words carried the excitement of discovery and the satisfaction of problems solved through teamwork. "When species work together with full communication," Rick explained, "we don't just add our capabilities together. We multiply them. The solutions we found during the rescue were better than anything humans or Zephyrians could have developed separately." The Assembly approved new protocols that reversed 3 centuries of communication restrictions. Vocal communication would not only be permitted but encouraged in all interspecies interactions. Translation systems would be upgraded to preserve emotional content rather than filtering it out. Cultural exchange programs would help species learn to understand each other's emotional expressions. Lisa Webb was appointed to head the new Interspecies Communication Institute, which would train diplomats from all species in the art of vocal cooperation. Her first class would include young representatives from every major civilization, learning together how to bridge the gaps between different forms of consciousness and expression. The transformation began immediately. Alien students arrived on Earth to study human languages and emotional expression. Human volunteers traveled to alien worlds to learn the musical speech of Zephyrians, the harmonic communication of Vortani, and the chemical songs of nebuloids. Captain Zixhal established the first integrated settlement, where humans and Zephyrians lived and worked together. Children from both species played together, learning each other's languages and creating new forms of communication that combined the best of both cultures. Their laughter and songs became symbols of the new age of cooperation. The rescue of the Haven of Tides was commemorated with a memorial that featured recordings of human and alien voices working together. Visitors could hear the moment when Lisa Webb first spoke to Captain Zixhal, breaking 3 centuries of silence with words of compassion and hope. Schools across the galaxy began teaching the true history of first contact, including humanities, sacrifice of vocal communication, and the tragic misunderstanding that had kept species apart. Children learned that the greatest discoveries often came from questioning old assumptions and having the courage to reach across the barriers that separated different forms of life. Amy Foster's research revealed that every species in the galaxy had unique gifts to offer. Humans excelled at emotional communication and creative problem-solving. Zephyrians brought patience and systematic thinking. Vortani offered logical analysis and harmonic beauty. Nebuloids contributed adaptability and perspective that came from existing between the solid worlds. The galaxy became a richer, more vibrant place as species learned to truly communicate with each other. Trade flourished as trust replaced suspicion. Scientific research accelerated as different forms of intelligence worked together on complex problems. Art and culture blossomed as creative minds from multiple species shared their unique perspectives. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of the new interspecies cooperation fleet. His ships carried mixed crews from all major species, working together to explore unknown regions of space and provide assistance to any civilization in need. The silence that had once defined humanity's place in the galaxy was replaced by the sound of many voices working in harmony toward a shared future among the stars.